Have you ever felt like a total alien on Super Bowl Sunday? While 115 million people are screaming at their TVs as if the fate of the universe depends on the trajectory of a prolate spheroid leather ball, there is a massive shadow population that genuinely, deeply, could not care less. I am not talking about the contrarians, those folks who pretend to be edgy or intellectually superior just for the sake of attention. I mean the people who view the Super Bowl hype with the same profound emotional neutrality you might reserve for a competitive butter sculpting championship or the history of municipal zoning laws. If you are one of them, you've probably sat in a room full of jersey-clad friends and wondered, is there something wrong with my fun chip? Am I missing a vital piece of the human experience? Well, spoiler alert, your brain isn't broken. In fact, it is working in a very specific, highly calibrated way. To understand why you aren't biting the bait, we have to look past the scoreboard and into the complex architecture of the human mind. First, let's establish a fundamental baseline: caring about sports isn't a factory setting. Your brain doesn't emerge from the womb pre-programmed to lose its mind over a touchdown or a field goal. For the obsessed fan, the game triggers a phenomenon psychologists call BIRGing, or basking in reflected glory. Essentially, the fan's brain borrows the win. When you identify strongly with a team, your brain blurs the line between them and me. You sit on your couch, eat your wings, and perform exactly zero athletic feats, yet when your team wins, your brain rewards you with a massive surge of dopamine and testosterone as if you were the one sprinting into the end zone. For the unfan, that borrowing mechanism simply doesn't trigger. You see 22 strangers in helmets running into each other, and your brain performs a cold, logical audit. I do not know these men. Their success does not improve my bank account, my health, or my status. Error 404, reward not found. Without that neurological proxy, the Super Bowl is just 3 hours of strangers interrupting your favorite commercials. This lack of engagement often traces back to what the Journal of Consumer Psychology calls optimal stimulation level, OSL. Think of it as a master volume dial for your nervous system. Every human has a sweet spot of arousal, a level of environmental noise, excitement, and chaos where they feel most comfortable. Some people are born with their dial set to low. They crave high-intensity, emotionally charged, loud environments to feel alive. Without the roar of the crowd, they feel understimulated and restless. But for others, the dial is already at a 7 or 8 just from the friction of daily life emails, traffic, and general thinking. For this second group, a Super Bowl party isn't exciting, it's an intrusive sensory assault. If your brain is already humming with its own complex thoughts, projects, or interests, you don't need a stadium full of screaming fans to reach your peak. You are already there. Adding a football game to that mix is like trying to listen to a string quartet while someone operates a jackhammer next to your ear. It's not that you're bored, it's that you're already full. Beyond the individual wiring, we have to consider the evolutionary roots of the tribe. Humans are tribal by nature. We survived the Stone Age because we formed cohesive groups that could outcompete others for resources. Evolutionary psychologists argue that sports are simply a modern, sanitized simulation of that ancient tribal warfare. It's a way to scratch the itch of us versus them without actually having to throw spears. But here is the modern twist: the football tribe isn't the only game in town anymore. In the 21st century, our tribes are fragmented and hyperspecific. You don't have to join the NFL tribe to satisfy your evolutionary need for community. You might get that exact same sense of belonging from a niche subreddit about mechanical keyboards, a vintage film restoration society, or a local community garden. People who skip the Super Bowl aren't loners, they have simply found their tribe in spaces that don't require them to memorize quarterback statistics or debate the esoteric definition of a completed catch. You aren't antisocial, you're just socially selective. This selectivity often ties into a concept called the locus of control. This refers to whether you believe you have influence over the events in your life, internal, or whether you feel at the mercy of outside forces, external. Think about the ritual of the fan, wearing lucky socks, sitting in the same chair, and screaming at the screen. Deep down, the fan is trying to exert influence over an event they cannot control. For many, this emotional roller coaster is the draw. However, for a significant portion of the population, this feels fundamentally unsatisfying. If you have a high internal locus of control, you likely prefer to spend your energy on things where your effort creates a direct, tangible result. Why watch someone else play a game when you could spend 3 hours mastering a difficult guitar riff? Why watch a team build a lead when you could spend that time coding an app or organizing your workspace? You aren't boring, you are simply wired for active investment rather than passive consumption. Your brain demands a clear return on investment, ROI, for its precious attention. Furthermore, we must acknowledge that about 1 in 5 people are what psychologists categorize as highly sensitive people, HSP. For an HSP, the Super Bowl is less of a party and more of a 3-hour endurance test. The architecture of the broadcast is designed to be overstimulating, the flashing neon graphics, the aggressive in-your-face tone of the commercials, the booming bass of the halftime show, and the cacophony of 10 people talking over each other in a cramped living room. For an HSP, the brain processes this environmental data so deeply that it quickly leads to sensory overload. While others are getting hyped, the HSP is often sitting quietly, calculating how much longer they have to stay before it is socially acceptable to leave and retreat to a dark, quiet room. If this sounds like you, it's not that you're a party pooper, it's that your nervous system is simply too high fidelity for the low-resolution chaos of a sports riot. You are processing the world at a depth that makes the hype feel like white noise. This sensitivity also plays into how we handle stress. Sports are built on the thrill of uncertainty. But in an era where modern life is already a dumpster fire of notifications, economic instability, and global crises, many people have a very low tolerance for manufactured anxiety. If the outcome of the game doesn't affect your rent, your health, or your family's well-being, sitting through the artificial tension of a nail-biter finish feels less like entertainment and more like an unpaid internship in stress management. When your real-life stakes are already high, you don't feel the need to volunteer for 3 more hours of cortisol spikes over something that, objectively, doesn't change your reality. For you, relaxation is the absence of conflict, not the simulation of it. Perhaps the most exhausting part of being an unfan isn't the game itself, it's the social masking. It's that awkward, recurring moment when a coworker or a friend asks, "Did you see that play last night?" To avoid being labeled the weirdo or the buzzkill, many people perform a version of themselves that cares. They nod, they say yeah, crazy, and they mirror the energy of the room. This creates a specific type of loneliness, the feeling of being physically present but psychologically invisible. This disconnect is why many people eventually opt out of these gatherings entirely. It's not just that the game is uninteresting, it's that the energy required to pretend it's interesting is depleting your mental battery. At the end of the day, whether you live for the halftime show or you'd rather watch paint dry, you aren't wrong. Society is a complex ecosystem. We need the passionate fans to keep traditions alive, to fuel the economy, and to provide that collective high that bonds cities together. But we also need the shadow population, the quiet observers, the creators, and the deep thinkers who stay focused on other things while the rest of the world is momentarily distracted. The fact that 115 million people can lose their minds in unison while another massive group is perfectly happy reading a book or sleeping is a testament to the incredible diversity of human thought. It proves that there is no single right way to be happy or entertained. So, if you're spending this Sunday in a quiet cafe, catching up on a project, or just enjoying the eerie silence of the grocery store aisles while everyone else is glued to a screen, don't let the hype make you feel small. Your time, and your brain, belong to you. You aren't missing the party, you're just attending a different one that actually suits your temperament and your values. If this perspective resonated with you, it's a sign that you've claimed your own autonomy in a world that often demands conformity. If you want to dive deeper into the psychology behind our daily behaviors, feel free to subscribe or join our community for more insights. Your focus is your most valuable resource, spend it on what makes you feel truly alive. Thanks for watching.